Hi, I'm Simon Brown. I'm the creator of the Wand Tonearm and Turntable. I'm here today to talk about the new dark light tonearm and in particular to talk about the installation and so on. The biggest obvious thing about the dark light tonearm is the big taper on it, and I've called this a musical taper because it gives the arm quite a bit more strength and staggers the harmonics, and it's very musically satisfying. In terms of installation, let's have a look at first what's in the box. So in the box, as well as the arm, there's a protractor, there's a get you going cable, there's a number of different weights, there's a number of different nuts for the bottom and to mount in different ways, and head shell weights and an alternative cartridge carrier. I'll talk about those later. One of the nice features about the dark light tonearm is that I've tried to make it as universal fitting as possible, even though the actual length of it is 10.3 inches. It means I have made it so that you can mount it in either a 9-inch mounting, which is an old Lin project sort of mounting, or in the 222mm mounting, which is Rager and other arms, or you can actually mount it on my 246mm 10.3-inch mounting. The way it's achieves this, and it's one of the things you need to think about before you start, because you need to move the mounting plates, is that on the side of it where that tower is, there is this is showing just two different positions, but there's a third one in the middle that I ship it out for the Rager dimension, because that's probably the most common, but you can move it at this end to the Lin project dimension, or that end to the sort of Wand 10.3-inch dimension. Yeah, so you just undo two screws and move the whole thing across. So assuming you know where you're going to put the hole, I mean, if you actually have to drill a hole from scratch, my development of protractor I've evolved over the years does this for you. You put that end over the LP spindle, and then this will give you dimensions of where to drill holes, but most people won't have to do that. Okay, so the first thing we do is we start to put the tonearm into the product. I mean, here we've got a Wand Master turntable, which is a big long slot, which is very flexible. The arm comes with a number of fittings to facilitate different holes. The nominal it uses is 25mm, but can be as small as 18, and at a stretch it can be as big as 50. As you get bigger, you'll have to use this supplied washer on the top and the big nut on the bottom. There's also a lock washer for when you're using particularly wood turntables, which can expand and contract with humidity and temperature, and sometimes the fitting can become looser. So on the Wand turntable, we're just going to use the big nut on the bottom, and I should note that the tonearm is supplied with the vertical tracking angle sort of compressed to go in the packaging. We can stretch that up in both dimensions. I'll show you this later. We do an initial screw on just to get a few threads in place, and then we use the Wand protractor, and so LP spindle where it says, and then this spike goes above the central pivot, and I've nearly got it right already, but it's easiest to swing it round until it's in the right, until it's pointed down over the middle of the arm. And depending on the size of your hole in the turntable, there may be quite a limited position where it can park, but that's okay if you're aware of that. Anyway, so I'm going to tighten that up as an initial setting of the overhang and height. What I haven't sort of said or shown is that that spike sitting in the cup at the top gives you about a level, the tone arm approximately level with the average sort of cartridge on it. So the next thing we should do is fit the cartridge. Here I'm using a Hana that conveniently has screws from the top and has a good stylus guard. So even though the cartridge carrier plate slides back and forth to adjust overhang, there's one position where you can actually access both the holes from the top, and so that's what we're going to do now. There is one, for cartridges that actually have to have a tap mounting, we supply a second mounting that's got tapped holes in it at M2.5. But today we're just going to drop them through. So that's dropped through there. I find it easiest to get one in place first. And not tighten it up too firmly. Turn it around till you can see the second screw, this screw hole, and then tighten that up. We're now going to put the cartridge clips on. Hopefully your cartridge manufacturers put some sort of coding so you know where you are. These are all colour coded, of course. Hopefully, as I say, they match the pins on your cartridge. We ship it in the middle of its range of travel, but in actual fact, because different turntables have hugely different heights of platter to mounting, there's quite a bit more available in terms of the bottom mount that goes into the tone arm. There's a screw in the side of that at the top, and you can loosen that and give yourself more or less height. That also lets you move the angle round, which is important if you've got a right angle minied in plug and you want to orient that. So by loosening that off, that lets you orient that. The screw on the side of the mounting gives you an indication as to the orientation of the tone arm plug. This screw is aligned above the gap in the pins of the plug. This gap feels like a flat to my finger. It also aligns with the scallop of the pin protractor and on the white lettering on the side of the supplied cable if using that. So I'm now going to talk about setting the vertical tracking angle. The main adjustment for the vertical tracking angle is this tower here, and it's marked plus for up, minus for down, obviously. Depending on whether you're someone who adjusts it a lot or only on setup, there are actually two different locks. For people who use it a lot, there's a thumb screw on the side there, and you have to loosen that off. And in terms of initial setup, you have to do that anyway. For people who only use it on the sort of initial setup, there's a locking screw which uses the standard Wand screwdriver that hopefully does all the functions you need, and that can be used to lock it firmly in place till the protractor either touches on the top, which gives you approximately level height, or whatever your preferred setting is, whether you prefer it a couple of degrees down or whether your cartridge likes it to be nose up. Important feature now to show you is that I've been handling the arm really without it moving around too much, but one of the other features of the arm is there's a transit lock on it, and at this stage we have to take it off. So here's one I prepared earlier. So the arm is shipped with the transit lock, which is this area under here, in the lock position so that it doesn't move around. It also lifts the arm slightly so there's no weight on the bearing for shipping purposes. So what we do is we unscrew that thumb screw and then turn that over, and there's a notch that fits around there. that back in. And that gives us, that's our sort of play position, and then the arm can move, which is now what we want to do over here. For everyday use, there is a lock to prevent accidental movement of the arm. Just raise it when you wish. Next thing to do is to get the overhang a bit more accurately, or finalise the overhang. The reason for doing this is that if you alter the overhang later, you'll alter the tracking force. So we'll get the overhang right first, and then we will do the force later. I've got the stylus guard on so I can be more casual about this, but you can do it if there isn't a stylus guard. You just have to be a lot more careful. Till I've got it so the lines actually do line up in parallel. Then adjust the overhang by loosening the 2 screws on the top of the head shell and sliding the cartridge forwards and back until the stylus is above the mark on the protractor. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the tracking force. Here, the dark light, I've tried to make it quite conventional with a rear movable weight. What I've done though is there's a little more flexibility to cope with different cartridges, in that the weight is an adjustable weight. So we ship it with one medium weight plate and one sort of lightweight plate as part of the weight carrier. We supply another weight which can be screwed on. So all you're doing is you're winding that back and forth, and as you measure with your preferred type of stylus gauge the tracking force on the end. And if you have a heavier cartridge than that range, you put the second weight on. If you have a cartridge that needs a heavier weight, part of the design ethos of the wand is to actually minimise the rear weights to try and reduce the resonant properties of weight. So in general, we've lumped as much weight as possible into the main body, which also supports the bearing and gives you like a virtual earth, which is one of the reasons why the wand sounds good. So we provide a couple of these medium heavy weights. They've got felt facing on them, and so the idea is you screw the felt face to match to the next door metal one. That screws on. Just be a little gentle, because the carrier is a sort of plastic material, and metal wins over plastic if you get it wrong. But we've chosen that because in actual fact it did sound better than having a metal on metal contact. So then you just screw that back on and set the weight for your heavier cartridge, which this one isn't. Just a reminder, when you're adjusting the rear weight, it's helpful if you just support the tonearm wand with the other hand, just to balance the force you're doing there. Now we're going to plug it in. The thing to watch is that, if you remember, there's this guard on the bottom of the plug. For putting it back on, it has a notch in it that goes level with the place where there isn't pins. In a similar way, the Get You Going plug wiring has a mark on it for where that flat side is. It's still very hard to orient these plugs, and you have to be careful because the pins are fairly easily bent, but you can feel when it goes in. As you see, this cable has a flexible area for semi-suspended turntables. You obviously can use your preferred cable, and with a tonearm of this calibre, it's generally expected that you will use your own preferred cable, but this is just to get you going, and it's perfectly adequate for some people. Okay, so all we're doing is we're looking to feel where that flat is and literally plug it in when it feels in the right place. And I've done it a few times before, so it's gone in. plug that into your amplifier. Earth as necessary. That concludes the basic setup of the Wand Dark Light Tonearm. There's another video which just shows you some of the more refined details that many people will want to know, but kept the initial video simpler that way.